All of us want to feel like we have control. If you were anything like me when I was younger, I had my whole life planned out before me. I was going to go to college when I got this age. I was going to move out. I was going to find a husband and a couple years after that have kids. I was going to travel the world and get this great job and everything would be so magical. But as I get older, I can see pieces of that plan that I had unraveling before me. And it can be really easy to just let that pressure, not knowing what to do, just take over me and make me feel anxious and depressed and hopeless, feel like I'm drowning. But I've found that that's not at all how we're supposed to live, because we're not relying on our control. See, we as Christians are relying on God's control. He has told us that we don't have to do this by ourselves. There's a story in the Bible. It's the story of Joseph, often referred to as Joseph in the coat of many colors. See, Joseph was one of the youngest in a big line of brothers, and he was his father's favorite. Because of this, his father placed him at a position of leadership among everyone else, and they hated him for this. They hated Joseph so much that they sold him into slavery, their own brother. And through all of this, Joseph could have chose to just remain in his own control, to stay where he's comfortable, where he had the position of power. But instead, Joseph chose to give that control to God. There's a verse that Jesus uses in the Bible. Jesus says in Matthew 11:28-29, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." See, that's such an amazing verse for me, because Jesus is telling us that in all of this craziness, when it's so hard and life is so tiring, we don't have to do it alone. He's saying that we need to come to him. Come to him when we are tired. Come to him when we just need rest. He goes on to say, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." See, Jesus is inviting us into a partnership with him. He's saying, I don't want you to do this alone. I want you to come to me so that we can do this together. I heard a story about a young musician. He was just crazy at the guitar. From a very young age, he could just hear a song and be able to play it right like that. It was natural to him, a gift he was born with. But because of that, he never really pushed himself to do more. He stuck with the little ability that he had. He stuck with that amazing talent, and everyone telling him, "You're so great at it." And so he just stayed there. He never tried to go past that little comfort zone, never tried to get out of the box he built for himself. One day, he was with a group of people, and he was performing for them. They would show him a song, and he would play it for him. And everyone was having a good time. When an older man stood up and said, "Hey, could you play this song?" Now, the younger man didn't know this, but this older man was phenomenal at the guitar. He was so talented, far beyond the years of the young man. So he said, "Sure, I can play that song." And he listened to it and quickly realized that that was outside of his comfort zone. That was out there where it was hard, where he had to fight for what he wanted. And so he gave the phone back and he said, I'm sorry, I can't play this song." Later that night, the older man approached the young man. He said, "Hey, I can teach you how to play that song." And the young man agreed. And together the two of them formed a partnership where the older man mentored the younger one and pushed him past his comfort zone. The younger man no longer had to walk past that barrier alone. No, he had a strength. He had someone that was far beyond him, wiser than him, to help guide him through the struggles that he would face. That's what Jesus is for us. God wants to do this as a partnership with us. That's what Jesus is telling us in that verse. That we don't have to do this alone, that we don't have to carry that burden alone, but that he will take the burden from us. In fact, it goes on to say, "For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." He's saying that when you do this with me, I'm going to help you out. When you do this with me, we'll be a partnership. The rest of the story of Joseph is just such a great one, because Joseph goes from a slave, then he goes to a high position of power as a servant, And then he gets dropped to the prison, where he is at the lowest of lows. But God takes Joseph from the prison to the palace in less than a day. When we choose to put our faith in God's control, he will take us from the prison to the palace. Joseph goes on to save millions of lives, all because he chose to trust in God's plan, because he chose to relinquish his control to God's control. That is what happens when we give our control, our plans for our lives, our purpose for our life. When we give all of that up in favor of God's control, in favor of God's purpose and God's plan. When we have faith in God's purpose for our life, God's control.